Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for joining me today. Today we have something a little bit different, a bit of a change of pace from my normal videos, my usual reviews and built model reviews. Going to take a look at a couple of model tanks that I've built recently in the last couple of months, last 2 or 3 months. Both of them in 1/35th scale, which is a common scale for armour and military modelling, and both of them by Japanese company Tamiya. Placing them in the more affordable end of the model tank kit market, and arguably some of the simpler ones to build as well. I think it's probably fair to say. So like I say, something a little bit different this time. I hope you will enjoy it though. So what we've got here, we've got on the left hand side there an M48A3 Patton, as used by the US Army in the 1950s and 60s. This one in the 1960s certainly. This is painted up and with the decals to represent a tank that would operate in the conflict in Vietnam. On the right hand side we've got a Tiger tank. This one is a Mark I Tiger, the first type of Tiger, as used by the German Army on various different fronts in the Second World War, following its introduction in, I think, 1942. This one dates from slightly later, I think about 1943 or 4. And is what they call the mid-production variant, and there are a few differences from the very first version, which we'll take a look at in a moment. So starting off with the newer tank first, the M48A3. One thing to note, by the way, just to give you an example of the size of these things, they work out the same or slightly bigger than a 1/24th scale car, even though they're a much smaller scale. So you get really nice big chunky models when you build these tank kits. Really impressive when they're built. So yeah, this is the Tamiya M48A3, and it's one of Tamiya's older kits. Now I really enjoyed this, I must admit, and I'm pleased with how it built up. I did buy a separate photo etch detailing set, which I didn't use all of, but used some of the parts from, which have made some improvements to the model. There are some things that give away the age of the kit. For example, the way that the top of the hull fits onto the bottom of the hull. It has these sort of little, almost sort of vinyl caps that help secure the top onto the bottom, which I think would be because when it was first designed, the kit was designed to have the top taken off so you could put batteries in, and it would be motorised, which is not something that you typically find with model tank kits these days, but did happen back then, I think in the 1970s with the Tamiya stuff, and probably some others as well. So I'm not sure for experienced tank modelers, people who know more about military modelling than I do, they probably wouldn't be too impressed with this, but I really like it. It's got the old sort of rubber band style tracks. You can see the track flexing there. That's a one-piece rubber strip moulded to look like tank tracks, which loops around the wheels, sprockets and return rollers, and joins up. Same on the other side, obviously, which I think these days is seen as being a bit basic, but I still like it, and it's pretty easy to use, pretty easy to work with, to be fair. Details that come in the kit, I mean, it's pretty well done from my point of view, from the start, really. You get this high power spotlight mounted on top of the barrel there, on the front of the turret, which apparently was used to flush out enemy combatants at night time, I believe, according to what I've read. You get that, quite a nice detailed commander's cupola there, that sort of little mini turret on the top there. Those vision ports aren't glazed in this one, so I've just painted them gloss black to represent the sort of vision ports, the prismatic periscopic things that I think they have in those. You get what I think is I assume is a 50 caliber machine gun on top of the cupola there as well. There are some photo etch details on this one which came with the photo etch set, including the ammunition case there with a little strip of ammunition there. Not 3D because it's photo etch, so it's flat, but it looks the part. I think it looks pretty good. And you get the spare track links to go onto the turret. You get the stowage bins and the spare wheel there. In terms of the stowage, I've got a couple of Tamiya Vietnam era ration pack boxes in there as well, which I've sort of creased up a little bit, made them look dirtier than I intended to be honest. And then some general stowage, the cruise packs, which I made with a little bit of modelling putty and painted up, which, to be honest, to me, I think they look more like pebbles than they do soldiers' kit bags, but never mind. Yeah, it is what it is. On the back end here we've got the snorkel, which I assume would be for fording rivers and watercourses. The travel lock for the gun there, which is in its stowed position. These grills, which are not genuine grills, they're just external ridges, but pretty good. These sort of inner fenders and surrounds to the rear exhausts, they're part of the photo etch set, so you bend those and form those into place yourself. The water stowage jerry cans there, and on the hull they came with the kit, although the straps on them are from the photo etch kit, so they're a little bit more finesse there. Yeah, the various storage boxes on the top of the fenders there, they came with the kit. That's all standard. Really, it's pretty good as far as I'm concerned. Pretty good straight out of the box. And obviously you can leave the turret so that it'll slew back and forth there. I think I've glued the gun in place so that won't actually elevate, but that's okay. So there we go. That's the M48. Paint-wise, I took quite a simplistic approach with this one. It was the first tank I'd built for years. So I sprayed it with I think it was a Tamiya olive green base coat, which was apparently fairly similar to the colour that these would have been painted for operations in Southeast Asia, probably operations anywhere at that time of day. And then just weathered it with various washes of different weathering products made by the MIG company, if you're familiar with them. Just different earth tones and dark tones to sort of give it a weathered appearance. Although I think ultimately what I've ended up with here doesn't look like a heavily weathered vehicle. I think it looks used. You know, it looks like it's been in theatre, but really not as heavily weathered as some of the real ones that I've seen in photographs from that time. That's the M48. Really cool. If you fancy just building a tank, you just want something that's going to go together well and look nice, and you can find those relatively cheaply, I say go for it. You'll have a blast, you'll enjoy yourself. So next up is the Tiger 1. The tank name, I believe, that was such a terrifying thing to hear to Allied troops on the ground back in the Second World War. I believe there was even such a thing as, was it Tiger Fever or Tiger Terror, something like that they called it, where just the very idea or sound of enemy tanks approaching would suddenly make people worry. Oh my, what if they're Tigers? What are we going to do then? Although I believe actually its weaknesses became known over time, and they became not exactly less of a threat, but there were ways for the Tiger's enemies to deal with it better once they'd found out how to do so. So this, again from Tamiya, 1/35th scale, same scale as the M48 there, so you can see a slight difference in size, going from the mid-40s to slightly later on. Although this is a 1960s M48A3 Patton, I think the design of it came from the M26 Pershing and M41 Walker Bulldog from late in the Second World War. I think that's true. That's based on what I've read. If I've got that wrong, then I probably have got that wrong. Then apologies. So let's take a look at this Tiger 1. And like I say, probably at the simpler end in terms of Tiger tank kits. I've got a couple by a company called Dragon, which I haven't built yet. But in terms of the parts count and complexity of those kits, they are a little more challenging than this one, I think. There's still plenty going on with this one though. So this doesn't have the rubber band type tracks that the M48 has. This has individual track links. So each link that you see there is on a frame, it's on a sprue with all its little track link pals, and you've got to cut them off and assemble them, which I thought was going to be really hard. I sort of got into a rhythm and found that it worked best by having the wheels and drive sprockets fitted already to the tank suspension, and then building sections of tracks and fitting them once the cement between them was just starting to set. That's what I did. If you know a better way of doing that, please comment and let me know, because I probably could do with a better way of doing that. This, I didn't get a photo etch set for this one, and no photo etch comes with the kit, so this is plain Jane, straight out of the box, nothing else added here. And again, you know, reasonably nice detail. You've got on top of the Commander's cupola there, you've got what I imagine would be an MG42 heavy machine gun on its mount, and then this kind of horseshoe-shaped rail on top of the cupola for that gun to be swung around and brought to bear in different directions. Empty vision hatches here. I don't know whether or not they actually were glazed, had periscopes in them at that time, or whether it simply was a case of getting your Mark 1 eyeball nice and close inside it and taking a peek outside. However, it was an improvement over the earlier ones that didn't have them at all. So again, another change from the earlier models of Tiger tanks. This has a circular hatch which would swing outwards over the side of the turret when the commander was seated with his head and shoulders out there. Apparently that was because on the earlier models, where the hatch lifted up, almost like a large headrest, made it easier for enemy gunners to target the commander. It essentially got a great big bullseye right behind him. So apparently that's the reason for the change in that. That's what I've read anyway. Again, you get 70, 80 years down the line, who really knows what the thinking was. I made a few changes to the way the kit goes together. So these sets of mud guards, splash guards, on the side here come as one long strip, as they looking nice and smart and straight as they would have done when the tanks were assembled. I've got an excellent photo library book showing Tiger tanks in combat, and any that have seen combat don't look like that anymore, and they're looking quite ragged usually, with skirts bent, misaligned, missing. Sometimes they look as if they've been purposely removed by the crew, and some of them lack all the splash guards on the sides and at the rear as well, and at the front even. So I've cut those up and sort of bent them a little bit using the old trick where you just heat up a blade and twist it with the blade. A bit old school, not very sophisticated compared to what armor modelers are usually doing these days, but I found it worked okay. It doesn't look brilliant, but it just looks like it looks like a tank that's seen some action. That's all. The other thing I did with this was to apply Zimmerit coating to the vertical surfaces on the hull and turret and onto the front here, where I believe that's called the glacis plate on a tank. So Zimmerit was a paste coating added to German tanks between, I think, about 1942 and 44, and it was designed to repel magnetic mines, stop them sticking to the tank. It was put on at the factory where the tanks were built, and then the paint went over the top of it. So it's not included in the kit. They don't put it on for you. I think there are some kits that do that, but this one didn't. So I used some MIG putty, rolled it as flat as I could, stuck it on the tank, and then made those sort of notched patterns in it using a purpose-built Zimmerit tool for the job. My first go at it, and it's okay. I'm fairly happy with how it turned out. It's a bit blobby, a bit pancakey compared to the better efforts I've seen online, which is all the efforts I've seen online, to be fair. They all seem to have managed slightly better than I did, but for a first attempt, it's okay, I like it. Again, notice the gun barrel travel lock there, similar to what we saw on the M48, similar thinking there. Again, so when it's on a tank transporter, or in the case of the Tiger, a railway flat car, the gun could be stowed to the rear and locked in place, I believe, potentially to reduce the overall length of the vehicle. I think that would be the point of that. I've dented up the exhaust shrouds a little bit there as well. Again, you can find pictures of those completely missing on the real ones. And yeah, everything that you see here comes in the kit, so the additional track links on the sides of the turret. Again, the turret can be left so that it traverses. I think on this one also the gun, I left it so it does elevate. Yeah. On this one, the paint finish I achieved by giving the entire vehicle a coat of dark yellow from the Tamiya aerosol range, which looked a fairly close match to the Panzer yellow, which was applied to German vehicles at that time, as far as I know. And I actually got a set of MiG early and mid Second World War armour colours, water-based paints. And I'm quite happy with the way that looks actually. I was quite nervous about doing this because it was the first time using my little cordless battery powered airbrush and compressor set, and I wasn't even very good at airbrushing before I started using that thing, so I was a bit nervous about doing that camouflage scheme, but I did. I airbrushed on the olive green and the sort of red brown colour there. I didn't do a perfect job, I think it's fair to say. And I hope to sort of smooth things out a little bit by then applying a very pale, dilute green-grey filter over the entire vehicle to sort of tone down what was quite dazzling looking camouflage to begin with. Hey, it's not going to win any shows, not going to impress any of the great armour modelers out there on the internet, but it's mine and I'm pretty happy with it, to be quite honest. So there we go. It's Tank Day here on the Springer Model channel today. Hope you enjoyed that. I'm not sure what's going to happen next. Will it be more armour, or will we be back into the cars and trucks? We'll have to wait and see. Thanks for watching, everybody.